Hello everyone, Rich Nance here with your Defensive Tactics Technique of the Week. Today we're going to talk about the importance of debriefs. Frank, let's face it, we all have a bit of an ego, especially if we wear a badge. I mean, that's something we have to try to keep in check, but
it's part of the type A personality we can't get away from.
Exactly, but we have to put our ego aside when we are doing critiques of our performance, whether it's watching dash cam footage or in training, listening to an instructor whose intent is not to berate us or to humiliate us, but to make us better, to make us safer. So we have to have thick skin. I know that when our SWAT team does an operation, as soon as that's over and everyone's safe and all of our equipment is accounted for, we do a debrief and we talk about usually what went wrong, what could we have done better. It's not about all patting ourselves on the back, because quite frankly, sometimes even if you don't use great tactics, things will go your way. Because
we call that luck.
Because you didn't meet with great resistance, or
right.
The person you're dealing with wasn't highly committed or motivated to injure you. I mean, there's a lot of reasons, but to just think, oh, that went well, nothing I could do to improve, that's ridiculous. I've been in situations where I've had to write articles about situations in the news where maybe someone who's carrying a concealed firearm deals with someone in a crowded environment. Perhaps there's multiple suspects. Maybe the concealed carry guy draws and engages with lethal force. Maybe things go well. I offer an opinion like, well, maybe he shouldn't have drawn in this particular situation, or here's some things that you can think of. This might not always be the best response, and people are quick to say, well, nothing happened, the bad guy was taken into jail, good for that guy for shooting him. That's all well and good.
We need to be thankful anytime everything goes the right way for the good guy. But if we just accept as rote that anytime we come out victorious, we did everything right, we risk two things. One, we have limited ourselves in our learning, and the best instructor is a professional student. The best operator is a professional student. You never ever stop improving your skills. And we also risk reinforcing bad habits, because if we did something wrong that worked for us, we got positive feedback on something we shouldn't have done.
Exactly.
We can't risk that. But where we learn those things is after the fact, obviously. It's not in the doing, it's in the reviewing, it's in the debrief, it's in the after action review. And that's why I've got this AAR, your OODA up here, because so much time we spend on critiquing our action. What was my score on the range? Depends on where the bullets went, depends on how I pulled the trigger. None of that is dependent on whether or not I made an appropriate decision to engage a target. It's just the action. Did I do it right? We're hitting a bag with a baton, we're putting handcuffs on somebody. We're not at that point in training critiquing the decision-making process that took us to the point where we were committing that act. Two things to say here. 75% of all learning happens in the debrief. It happens in the after-action review.
And that's because you're in a state where you can actually comprehend what people are telling you and everything else. Sometimes, I mean, let's face it, no matter how well trained we are, we get a little amped up in certain situations, and you're not going to recall, you might not even recall it exactly the way it went down. I've had that before too, a situation that happened in a holding facility where I was sure that I struck this guy a certain way, and I watched the footage, and no, I didn't strike him in that way.
Did you accept as proof the footage that you actually did what you say you had done?
So, sometimes our minds can play tricks on us in a way, but in this environment, afterwards everyone's relaxed, maybe you got some water, coffee, soda, whatever, everyone's sitting around.
But you've calmed down, your heart rate's no longer 180 beats a minute, you're not sweating with protective gear on. This is my favorite thing in simunition scenarios, and the guy's like, that's not what happened. You saying I doctored this videotape in the last 30 seconds when it took you to go from here to here? This is what happened, we're looking at now. Is it a different angle? Absolutely. Is this not your perception? Absolutely. But there is no better objective observer than a video camera. And we're learning that in the news every day with the personal cell phones and people making videos. And I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm not espousing it. All I'm saying is there's no way for any camera to catch our perception. Where we have to learn is when we're articulating our perceptions, when we're in that after-action review, and there's the action, it's on the camera. You drew and you fired 3 rounds out of your sim gun at this guy, at this whatever. Why? Well, nobody's saying, did you hit him or did you miss him? They're saying, why? What drove you? What did you observe? How did you perceive it to make you have that decision to pull the trigger? And that is what we've got to critique after the fact. Yeah. That's where the learning occurs.
The end does not justify the means. We want to know the thought
process
that we're going through, because quite frankly, it may not be up to us what the act is, what the end result is.
No,
but
it's going to be circumstantially dependent.
As long as we were reasonable and going about things in a accepted manner, using good decisions, that's what we're looking at. We're not, because you can do everything wrong and have a great outcome.
If you're exceedingly lucky.
Yeah.
Last note here for the instructors that might be watching this. Earlier we talked about criticisms and critiques. There is a distinct difference between the two. Somebody who's being critical of you is saying nothing positive. They're not offering you a solution for what they observed as a deficiency, either in your performance or your decision-making process. They are simply saying you were wrong, and that's a criticism. A critique offers and includes potential solutions, potential differences that you could have pursued, other options where you could improve your performance or your decision-making process. Rather than just breaking you down, it helps build you up.
And be careful about jumping to conclusions. You may critique someone, and then once you hear why he did that, there may be valid reasons why he went left instead of right that you're not going to know if you just say, you're wrong, you were supposed to go this direction. Well, listen to what he says first, and if it's an excuse, that'll become apparent. But there may be a valid reason why he went one way instead of another if you're talking about an entry on a building or whatever. But it's a great place. A debrief is a time where everyone can say what they noticed that went well, what they noticed that you can work on, and the goal is to be safer the next time.
Absolutely. And to remember this, the criticism usually is of an act. The critique is of the process.
Good point. So make sure that don't assume that just because everything worked out okay, everybody was safe, that you did everything as well as you could have. Always strive to improve. That's what's going to keep you safe.